This is going to be for issue 14 of the Kaiju Engine, where we set up new project code. I know this is a little early. We only have the window and the events set up for that window for mouse and keyboard. However, I find that setting up your project structure a little bit earlier helps so you don't have to parse out a bunch of code later. You can keep the project structure for folders in mind as you go. So what I'm going to create is I'm going to need a folder for the template. I'm just going to call it template or project template. And this is where we're going to have our template code. And we're probably going to compile it in. So the way that I am planning on projects to be is they should have all of the source code for the engine built into them, and they should have an additional folder called source where you put your source code for your particular game in it. And what this will allow is for that to be built as its own individual package rather than trying to piecemeal a bunch of stuff together. So it's going to be pretty much straightforward. We want to create a um, we want to create a project JSON file or something similar to say which files we ignore, because we're essentially going to be going in here and copying everything except for certain files. So I'm going to create a new ignore.json. And this actually doesn't even need to be a JSON. We'll just make this ignore.txt. And we're going to ignore these particular folders. So anything that starts with dot, we're going to ignore. That can just be a part of the code. We are going to ignore project template, and we only need to ignore the top level code, honestly. We don't, our top level files and folders, we don't need to dig into, project template dash whatever. So this should be a pretty simple ignore script or ignore file. So we're going to ignore the .get ignore. Actually, we'll just write out everything. .vs code, keep it simple. The code will be likewise simple. It ignore authors.md, contributing.md, go.mod, license, and readme.md. We'll have to think about what we're going to do with the main. We probably don't need the main that we're writing here because it's going to be set up for the editor. But we can actually pull that code out. So we can go ahead and copy the main over and just write the main so it appropriately builds. Speaking of which, I'm going to create an editor folder now. Editor. And we're going to ignore editor as well. So we'll ignore all of those and copy pretty much everything else into our project template folder as part of a build process. So that being said, I also like to have a build folder, which will have build Go scripts to build various things, like if we want to build textures or fonts, or in this case, the template project. So now we have all of those guys. We have a build and editor. I'm going to set up this editor code so that we can do something. We can do something with it, like have its own main here. Rather than creating the host directly inside of the main, we'll have a split main where we try to pull the engine code for running the game, and then we try to run the editor code for running the game that way. So to keep it simple, we'll have a main.go here. We might rename this because Go likes to have that as a special thing. So I have package editor, and then we'll have func main here, which isn't going to do anything at the moment. I suppose we can copy in. We can copy in some code here. Not exactly sure what, because we're going to wind up doing this in both. But let's just copy it into both and work with it from that. I'm going to also add a main.go here to engine. And we're going to add in a go build not editor in here. Oops. Package engine func main. So we have that, and then inside of this one, we're going to have go build editor. There we go. And now we have the two different kinds of mains that we can call from here. Actually, we can call the editor from the engine on its main. So I'm going to create a main.editor.go here, which we'll copy this and paste it here. That way we have two mains. One is for the editor and one is for the runtime. So in the editor one is where we'll just print line editor mode or starting editor, just so we know it's running. And then inside of this, we'll just say print line starting runtime. That way we can come over to our main here and we can create a host in general, and then subhosts can be created by the individual stuff. So this is fine. And we can just run engine.main here. So any of the setup that has to happen that splits between the editor and the runtime can happen there before it starts in its update loop. And lastly, I'm going to go up to VS Code and we're going to set up our configuration to do tag editor, just to say that we're running the editor by default whenever we're debugging. And then we can change this to launch Windows editor. And we'll copy this, paste it, launch Windows runtime, where we'll get rid of that. And then we'll do the same thing. Launch Linux editor runtime. There we go. And I guess I can call this launch X11 because it's not just Linux, it's anything that runs like the X11 server. Cool. Okay, so now we have our different ones. Let's make sure we're running the editor one. And let's run this just to make sure it's running and it prints out editor, that we're running the editor. Okay, there we go, starting editor. So that's a good start there. Now what we want to do is focus on this project template. So let's go into our build and we're going to say build template project. Actually, let's make the folder template project or project template. So it's the same naming main.go. So this is a run script. Anything inside of the build folder, we're essentially going to say go run on these, and we're not actually going to reference them in our main, so they'll never get compiled in. So we're going to do package project template, except I'll put the underscore in there. And what we want to do is we want to grab this ignore text file, and rather than grabbing it, we'll just embed it. So underscore embed. And we're going to embed the project template. So build. So this is going to be relative to this file. So it should be .. .. I think we can do that. Ignore.txt. We'll see. Var ignore string. And then we'll do func main, and we'll test it out. We'll print the ignore and see if it actually gets printed out, or if this is not going to embed because it's it doesn't work with relative, which it looks like it probably doesn't. I think I've ran into this before and I had to move things into the folder in question. Actually, we don't need ignore. We actually don't need ignore instead of template because that's the template that we're going to be copying around everywhere. We don't need the ignore in there, so we can just add it to our build script here, ignore.text, and that will work. So here we can say go run build slash project template slash, I think, can we just do the folder? Project is not a main package. Oh, this needs to be main. My bad. There we go. So it's printing out all of our files here that we're dealing with, and this is going to be relative to the top level. So since this is, we expect to run it in this folder, we don't exactly know where this script is going to run from, so we need to get wherever this is executing from and then go up to the overall engine folder. So to do that, we're going to do os dot, I think it's execute, what is it? It might be osarg0, but I'm pretty sure we have a define for getting where this is running from. Get working directory. No, I want to get the executing directory, the executable directory. Okay, so os.executable is what we had, was what we saw a minute ago. So we'll try this. Exe your, so we're going to print exe and see what that gives us. So this is actually running from some crazy other location, which isn't the best. I gotta think about this. Let's see what the args give us. Us.args 0. What does that give us when we run this? Is it the working directory? Nope, it's the executable. That's right. Okay, I was messing around and I got this runtime caller passing in 0 for don't skip anything. And this gives me the executable I'm interested in. I think this last one is okay, so we should probably check that and then use the working directory if it's not okay. If okay, then let's say working directory is equal to os.get working directory. This may do an error, of course. So if, we'll just have that error there. If this is okay, then working directory is going to be equal to the go main. Else if error is not equal to nil, then we're going to panic with the error. And now we have the working directory that we want to work with. So here we actually don't have the working directory. We want to do file path dot see absolute clean directory. Aren't these supposed? Hold on. There they are. I was like, which one are functions? Okay, so we want to get we'll get the absolute file path to working directory, and we know we want to go up 2. We want to go up to the build and then up 1 more. So this will be get the absolute, and then what other functions do we have in file path? Clean directory. Oh, we want to get the absolute directory just because if it's relative, I mean, relative may work just fine. But it's actually when this comes in, it is absolute. That's what this whole path is. So we'll do this, and then we will append a dot slash to go up to, I think I have to add that first slash in. So wd is equal to the directory of go main. And one of these returns an error, or do they both? Okay, this one may return an error. Error is equal to that. And then we can just say if path error is not equal to nil. We're not going to panic. If it is equal to nil, no, if it we're going to say new working directory. And if it is nil, then working directory is equal to new working directory. That's what we want to look at. Error. This returns a string and an error. This one just returns a string. Go main is a string. Oh, because of the plus in here. We just need to add it down there. So now if I run this, we get project template dot slash dot dot slash. I think I can even do a something like this. Will it get rid of the dot dot slashes for me? Yep. Cool. And that just cleans it up a little bit for readability's sake. So that'll give us our folder here. And now we want to turn it into get this project template. So we're going to say proj template folder is equal to working directory, no, not build, just slash project template. And then we want to make sure that exists. If it doesn't, probably because of this guy here or something, we're going to have a problem and we should panic out and something's goofy. So if os.stat stat this folder is not exists, then we want to panic. Project template folder not found was expected in engine in a Kaiju root folder. Okay, cool. So now we're at the point where we can test that. We got the folder, which means we didn't get to the panic. So now we have access to the project folder. And what we can do is just pull this all out into a helper function. Get project template folder string. And we'll just take all this, paste it in here. And rather than panicking here, we can turn this into a traditional string error. Return error. Return a blank string and error. And then I want to cut this. So no, I can just say return a blank string and errors.new. Is it errors.new? Yeah. Then we'll grab this and return the project template folder nil. And we'll say project template folder is equal to get, did I spell that right? No, get project template folder. Error. If error is not equal to nil, then we'll panic out here. And then we'll print project template folder. There. Cool. Declared but not used. Pretty sure I'm using it right there. Oh, because of this. We'll just stick it in the else case. And then we'll run that. And we got the project template folder. Cool. So at this point, we want to copy everything except the ignore. And actually, we're going to want the project template folder, but we're also going to want the root folder here. So we can return both of those, string, um, working directory plus project template. So here we can just return working directory, project template, and cool. We don't need to make this code all beautiful and fancy and structured and everything like that because it's really just a helper script to build out our project. We can keep it simple. If this becomes a big thing, which I don't suspect it will, because mostly this is just copy everything into the project template folder, and that's it. No other magic to it. So I think keeping it just this simple like this um, is fine. So we'll just rename this to find root and project template folders. Easy enough. So root project template folders, and now we can go through and we can print those two, make sure we get them both. So we got Kaiju and project template, and now we want to go through all of our ignores and copy everything that's not in the ignores. So for this, we want to actually go through and get everything in this top level, which there are a few helper functions like io dot what is it, io util dot read directory. Is this deprecated? Yeah, it's deprecated. What does it want me to use instead? As more efficient and correct choice, it returns a list of fs directory. So os.readdir is what we want. It's kind of the one I think I started to work with here. So we want to read everything in root, and this is going to give us a list of directory entries or an error. Entries or if is not equal to nil, panic, we've got a problem, else for entry, each thing in the entries, we'll do stuff with them. But before we do that, we want to split up this this ignore into some strings, a string array for things we want to ignore. So we'll say ignore entries entri entries. Did I spell it right? entries. Yeah, I think so. This does not need to be a map. I don't know what it's thinking. It's just an array of strings. And it's going to be an array of strings from our ignore list. So we can actually do strings.split ignore new line. And if there's a bunch of new lines in there, who cares? It's fine. We're not going to beat ourselves up over it. So ignore entry. So we're going to go through ignore entries, and range ignore entries. A skip is false. And rather than using breaks, I'm just going to do for I is equal to 0 and say and not skip. And then we can say skip equals it contains. And then we can say if not skip, we'll print the entry name just to see what it looks like. So get rid of these prints. Those are looking fine. Project template folder. I guess we'll leave that print for now so it doesn't complain on us. So let's run it. We have GitHub, gitignore, VS Code. So .git isn't showing up in here, so that's one we need to add to the ignore list. So let's go into our ignore list, and we're going to add in all the ones we don't care about. The easiest way might be, at least for now, just to copy all this and just paste it, and then get rid of the ones we want. We want HID, we want windowing, matrix, engine. We don't want editor. We don't want build, license, computer. Okay. So now we've got that set up. This was the ignore this. let's just do this first to make sure we get the entire list. Go back to ignore list. Okay, matrix, windowing, we want main, we want HID, we want engine, we want, and all the rest are not needed. Okay, I close these other ones just to simplify stuff. So now let's try this again. So the ones, it's still copying the .get, and this is probably because we're doing strings contains if the name includes this. We can probably just say, since the name is a relative, we can just say skip is equal to name is equal to ignore I. And we also need to say skip is equal to, oh no, if we're not skipping, we're going to keep going through. So let's see what we got here. So .get is still coming in. Let's just put let me print out what these guys are. Let's comment out that one. Okay. So I'm doing something fundamentally wrong here. Skip is, the name is equal to ignore entries I. Okay. Sometimes I forget I'm not on Linux. And Windows, we have a carriage return, which is /r/n. So we want to get rid of that carriage return. So do I and range, ignore entries, and trim white space will do just fine. So now let's clear this, and there we go. So we have engine, HID, main, matrix, and windowing. And those are the ones that we want to work with. So main is a file. So we have isdir to check if it is a directory, otherwise we know it's a file. So if is directory, do this, else do this, and we essentially want to do a file copy here. Otherwise, we want to create the directory or all subdirectories, and we want to copy each one of the files in there. So rather than doing that directly in here, it may make sense for us to make some kind of file helpers. But I believe that we have some help with copying files built into the runtime. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make a file system file for copying and copying folders and copying files. But since this is inside of its own package, we may have some trouble using it. We'll worry about that later. For now, we can even copy it in once we're done with it. So I'm going to create a new folder, not inside of build, just out here at the top level called file system. And we're going to have a file inside of file system called directory.go and one called file.go. Okay, so we're going to need the code for copying a singular file. So copy file, and we're going to need the source file, the destination, and we'll pass back an error for if something fails to copy. So source, I'll call it SF, error is equal to open that source file, and if error is not equal to nil, we're going to return error. Okay, else we'll continue on, and we're going to defer SF close. Now what we want to do is we want to check to see if the destination file exists, which maybe create does. Let's see, create creates it truncates an existing file, which is not what we want. We don't want to overwriting a file is a different operation. So let's just actually we probably do want to overwrite. No, because we don't want. Okay, my mind is going crazy. So when we have project template, we actually want to delete everything in the project template and recreate it because it could have a bunch of files in there that are old that we remove, we're no longer using. So yeah, we're going to make sure that the file doesn't exist by default with file copy, and then we can have another function for copy and overwrite or something like that, and then merge the two where similar. So we're going to do if os dot or underscore or os dot destination. If error is not equal to nil, then we are going to return error. Else, now we're going to go to the create stage, and this is a bunch of nested ifs that I don't like. So as to not nest all these ifs, I might just break it up like this. If error is not nil, return the error. Defer. We'll do the same thing here. If error is not nil, return the error. And then we'll do the same thing here. If error is not nil, return the error. Okay. That's because this error exists already. We can just do that. So now we can defer df close. Okay. Now we've finally gotten everything we need here. We can now do io.copy, and we can copy into the destination from the source df.sf, and here I can just do if or not equal nil, return error. Oh no, error should be nil in that case, and I need to return an error, so return error. Okay, so now we have our file copy. We want to create a folder copy. So directory func copy, what did I call that one? Copy file, copy directory, source and destination. And we're going to make use of that file copy. But first we need to do things like, I guess in this one we open. This one throws an error if it doesn't exist. If successful, method. But really, if there's an error, it will be a type of path error. Okay. So now we're wanting to do the directory, which means we need to make sure both exist. So we'll say dir info error is equal to os.stat source. The source has to exist. If there is not nil, return the error. If it's not a directory, return error not exist. That's good. Good suggestion there, Mr. AI. Okay, now we're going to create the destination if it doesn't exist. So let's see. Yeah, that's good. Just use the same read-write ability. Although it could probably be like 655, even if the parent isn't. We'll just leave it as is. So this seems about right. We want to read all of the contents of the directory. I don't like it generating giant blocks of code, so we'll work from here. So if, actually, let's just do the same thing we've been doing. If it's not nil, then return the error. And then we'll go through each of the entries and work out what we'll do from here. Remember that these are relative to the folder we're looking at. This is not reading each of the files within each folder and folder subdirectories and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to have to manage that. So we want to say, essentially, we want to concatenate the name of this file to the source direct or to the destination, and I guess the source as well. So source path is equal to file path dot join source and entry name, and destination is going to be the same thing. So if the entry is a directory, we're going to do that, and we're going to do the copy. If it's not, we're going to call copy file, which we have the special copy file function. Maybe we can just say else if, return error. So if it is a directory, then we're going to do the copy directory, which we're currently in. So it's kind of like a recursive call. So if it is a directory and, no, we're not going to do an and there. Yeah, let's just make it consistent. Look the same. Why not? There we go. So if it is a directory, we're going to do copy. If there's an error, return it. If it's a file, we're just going to copy the file. And that seems like pretty much all that we need, I'm pretty sure. We'll find out. And we're going to return nil as the error at the end here. Cool. Now, you can do some goofy stuff inside of Go, which it doesn't like. For example, I can do, I believe, a relative path like this to file system, and then do something like file system dot copy directory and file system copy file. But it's going to give me some. I wonder if I can do that. Let's find out. Okay, so I don't know what it copied in here. Copy directory, we're going to copy, the source is going to be root slash entry name. So we'll say from is equal to file path join root and entry name. So from, and then the to is going to be join project directory and entry name. 2. And copy file, same thing, from 2. And if we have any errors, we need to probably panic. I don't like this big nesting here either. So let's just simplify it. Bring this back 1. We don't need that anymore. We'll simplify this. Bring this back another. Okay. So here we're setting up all of our stuff, and then here we're going through all the entries. If we don't skip it, we then copy it. And we will see how this works, but we need to exit out if we have a error from here. And I don't exactly like the breaks. What we'll do is we'll get a list of, we'll break up these into an array. I don't need to be super clean here. I mean, this is fine enough. But what we'll do is we will say error is equal to that, error is equal to that. We don't really need to end if there's an error, honestly. It's just we should actually complain down here like failed to copy. So let's do that. If error is not equal to nil, print line error copying directory from to error. That's fine. That's a fine message to do. Same thing here. Error copying file. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Run the copy. Ooh, lots of errors. Error copying directory, Kaiju Engine to template engine, error, create file, template engine /entity.go cannot find the file specified. Okay, did I do this right? Source, destination, from to. Let's see. Oh, a bunch of folders got created, but nothing was copied. So now is a good time to delete that folder, the project template folder, project template. And technically, project template doesn't need to exist because we're going to wind up creating it. So we don't need to do this stat anymore. We can just return this as the project template. So we're going to delete project template as long as there's no errors. So os dot, is it rm rename remove all let's see, removes the named file or directory. Okay, so we're going to remove the project template folder. Error is equal to that. If error is not equal to nil, panic error. Then we need to create the directory and print out and panic if we can't create it. 755 is not exactly needed. We'll do 655 there. Okay, so now if we go down here, we're going into copy directory. And we're getting an error, create file. So create file is failing. Template engine entity.go. Let's make sure that we create the folder first. Make directory, read directory, copy file, open. Is not where we're having trouble. Destination here is where we're having trouble. So C drive, users brand documents, get Kaiju, project underscore template slash engine slash entity.go. System cannot find the file specified. I was just doing a test here. It says the directory is not empty, so we're going to get some issues unlinking the folder by the remove here. So perhaps remove all is what we need. Let's see. Yeah, it needs to be remove all. Okay. I will carry on with my testing here. Okay. Right here, we're statting, and if the file doesn't exist, we're throwing the error. So this actually needs to be, if the stat is equal to null, we need to return error, OS error exists. That's what our problem is there. Now we'll run again. And that one ran. And now we have engine, file system, HID, matrix, window, and we have our main here. So we've pretty much got everything that we need to run. The last thing we want to do for setting up the project folder is we want to we want a source folder, and we'll have essentially a main file in there that will be used as the entry point for the client program. So now that we've done all of that, we're going to create the source folder. Create source, and we'll pass in the files, the project folder. We don't need the root. So create source. Let's just make that one. Sorry, I'm putting it above. I'm used to C, but that's why I'm putting it at the top and not the bottom, even though it'll work fine at the bottom. So we want a main file, kind of, but we actually want it to be called source.go. So first we want to get source dir is going to be that plus source. We're going to try to make the directory. If it's an error, we're going to panic. And then we don't need to change the directory. We just want to say the main file is going to be source directory plus slash source. And I'm going to use a file path.join here. I don't like manually creating these. File path.join, source, and source.go. And that file shouldn't exist. If it does, we actually do want to throw an error here. So we're going to do a stat, and if there is not an error, we're going to panic and say the source file exists, or should we just truncate it? I mean, technically it's an error because that means we have a source folder up here. So we say panic source file already exists and should not. Okay. And technically I can also do that here to say if the folder already exists, but we're not gonna, it's fine. This is fine enough. So now what we want to do is we want to create that main file. If there's an error, we're going to panic. Otherwise, we're going to defer close. That's right. And now we can do the right string. And the package is not going to be main because we already have a main in the project template. This is copied over. It's going to call engine main. And then for the runtime of the engine, so if we go to engine main, I'm going to change this to main.runtime. For the main runtime, what's going to happen is we're actually going to do import we're going to import the source folder, which is going to require the project name. So I gotta think about that one a little bit as well. So it's essentially going to be like import, my project slash source. And then we're going to do source.main. This is essentially what we're going to be doing. But we'll come back to that when we set up the interpreter for the source code. And the engine is going to be all compiled. When you build your game, it's going to be completely compiled. There's not going to be any interpreted. There's not going to be any embedded scripting language or anything like that. So it's going to be as fast as possible. But in the editor, we're going to be able to read that source file and run it through a Go interpreter and actually use it like a scripting language in the editor, so we can get real time, code and testing and all of that sort of stuff. But when you actually build the runtime itself, the game, the project itself, is going to be pure, complete Go code from top to bottom. Nothing's interpreted. So that's the goal. So we're going to do package source, and then we'll add in a couple lines here. Func main to do add your source, say bootstrap your game here, your project here. May not be a game, who knows. And then that should be good enough. So if the error is not nil, we're going to panic. And then we're done. Great source. We can actually just return an error here, same as we did the other one. Return error, return errors.new, return error, and return error here. So error is equal to this. And I can, since this is the last one, I can just do not equal nil, return or panic error. Also, there's not any other variables coming off this, so it's fine to do it this way regardless if we add things at the end or not. Just like this one is here, this one can technically be set like that as well. Error is not equal nil. Actually, do I want nil? Yeah, not equal nil. This one as well. You just say if. That one does have a variable come off of it, so we'll leave it. Okay. Just a couple less lines. And we'll just return error here if there's no error. Or whatever it is. This is going to complain about should not be capitalized, blah, 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 blah. I think I could do format.error. Is that going to complain about capitalization? T. Error F. Yeah, it's complaining about capitalization. Okay. Whatever. And it should not be punctuated. Okay, we'll just do whatever you want. It's fine, bro. Okay. So we create the folder, we create the file, and then we write our primitive startup code in it. And that should create a source file. So let's give this a run. There we go. Project folder has a source folder, has this and this. So the last thing I really want to do is technically these should be like these should be prefixed with a error if you try to modify them. So it should have at the top something like code generated by Kaiju Engine. Do not edit. Something like that, so that if we come in here and we try to change like VP or something, we're adding in, when we modify that, this is supposed to pop up with a like warning saying, hey, you're editing a generated file. I think I did this right. Do not edit. Let me make sure I've spelled this right, or I've written this right. Okay, I've just copied this from somewhere else by Kaiju to build system. Do not edit. Kaiju build system. Well, it'll probably show up if I were to delete it and, oh gosh, I don't know what file it was. Config. VP. I don't know. No, nothing. Oh well. We will leave it, but we essentially want to put this at the top of the files so that that will pop up when it's working. It just doesn't want to work right now. Now, my only problem is when I copy the file here, we're doing just a straight copy from one to the other, verbatim. We're not modifying it whatsoever. And we do want that warning at the top of the file on all of the source code. Primarily because if you come in here to your project and you want to make modifications to these guys, the next time the template build goes out, it's going to overwrite all your changes, and that's not gonna that's no bueno. You want to be warned that that's going to happen. So maybe we'll have a copy file with warning or something like that. So let's do copy file, no edit, I guess. Func copy file, no edit, source destination string. So I'm just going to be a little bit lame here, and I mean, this is pretty straightforward code. We're never going to change it, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. And rather than doing a copy here, we're going to have to read from one stream and write to the other. And copy, does it continue writing? I think so. Copy copies from source until either end of file or reaches reached on source or error occurs. Returns the number of bytes copied. So I think we can just do something like we can create a IO writer from a string. Strings dot, is there a writer? No. String builder, strings dot builder. Is this an IO writer? Let's see. There's a write. Oh, I need a reader. Read. No. I need to convert a string. First of all, let's make the string. So do not edit. Whoops. Let's go to that config folder we had. Grab this. We'll probably want to pass the do not edit string in. I guess we do copy file prefix. Sure. Let's do that. We'll do copy file with a prefix. So we'll have copy file and copy file with prefix. Copy file with prefix. Destination prefix. And I have this file open, so I just get it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this out, paste it in here, and then we'll say copy file with prefix, and the prefix is going to be blank, like that, and we'll just return that. And here, if there is a prefix, which will be an empty string, so we don't even have to check if it's empty, really. But we will. If the length of the prefix is greater than 0, we're going to df write string prefix and put an error if there's an error writing the prefix. So now we'll need a likewise copy destination or directory prefix in here. But we don't want to prefix like text files and stuff like that. We only want to prefix Go code. So we may need to do some special stuff here. I think if it's a Go file, it should be just understood that it's copied and it shouldn't be edited. So we'll say copy Go source file. Then we don't even need the prefix. We just know we're gonna print out the error here, or the warning. So write string, we're gonna write this string with a new line at the beginning. And I'm just gonna do this. Return error. Okay, so here we can say if src dot or string dot has strings dot has suffix source go, then we're going to copy go source file, else we're going to copy the source file. Essentially do the same thing without the prefix. I don't like copying all this code. Well, it's not really ever going to change, so I'll just copy it in for now. Cool, so if it ends with go, then we are going to put in the prefix. So now, I'm going to delete that, and we're going to run this. And it looks like we got our thing here, but it put in the /n because we used the special backtick here. So I'm just going to put a new line because I don't want to have to deal with escaping these quotes. I'm a lazy man, I suppose. Just to make this prettier then. Put that back. So now when we come back, we've got that set up. And now we have the do not modify on all of these. This can be a capital K. the Kaiju build system. Cool. So now all of the Go files are going to have that. Is the Go build supposed to be above that? I don't think so. I think this is like the penultimate. If not, we can fix that later. So now we have essentially everything that we need. We have our ignore file, which will ignore the things we don't care about. And if it's source code, it gets prefixed with this error, which is awesome. So that will create our, this is essentially the beginning where we create the project template. And now what we need to do is just copy the project template to wherever they say they want it to be. And we're not going to do that here specifically. What we are going to do, though, is we are going to use that copy directory for this, just copying this out to wherever we need it to go. And that'll be a part of the editor because we don't need to copy projects outside of the editor. We'll have editor, and we'll have project, and then in project we'll have um, copy.go, I guess, package, project, and then we'll do func create new project path. This is where it's going to be copied to. We're going to say stat err is equal to os.stat path. The path needs to not exist, and this is going to return an error. It's not going to panic. So if it exists, if the error is blank, then, or if the path is a file, is what I'm trying to say. So if it is a file, so if its error is nil and stat dot is, if it's not a directory, we're going to return error exists. Otherwise, we're going to make the directory. In fact, we can say if error is not nil, it doesn't exist, we're going to make it. And if there is an error, we're going to return the error. Else, if it is not a directory, we're going to complain. And now we can go through and copy it in. So we'll just say file system dot, there's two file systems. Oh, it's because I copied it in here. No, weird. File system dot copy directory. And we're going to copy this project template. So the working directory of the engine is this folder, so we don't really need to think too hard about that. Well, let's just make a const project template folder is equal to project template. So we're going to copy from here to path. And that should be all we need to do. And this returns an error, so return a copy. So now we can just create a new project and have it go. So I'm just going to try that out here. We've got everything set up. When we run the editor, let's go to main. When we run the editor, I'm just going to create a project. So I'm going to say project.create project test. And let's just debug this. So it's running. This popped up. Oh, I didn't check to see if there are any errors. There's no test here. So let's see what we got. If that is not equal to nil, panic error, because I'm not keeping this. And don't know why I keep wanting to do that. Let's run this and see if we panic. Oh, we don't panic. Okay. What are we doing then? Oh, we're not even getting into the main here. Am I in the right file? Main.go instead of editor. Oh, no. Oh, wait, let's see. Engine, main editor. Okay. So, no, we don't want this one. Let's just, oh, I deleted the code that I was using. Oops. Let's just do it here. Project dot create project test. Okay, let's try this again. This runs. Here's our test project. It has all of our source code in it. It has our main source file. Okay, this one, code generated by Kaiju build system. Do not edit. This one should not have this in it. So we do have a special scenario for this source main. Perhaps we should make it as part of the create project rather than the copy, because we don't want to branch that for no reason in the copy files. So yeah, we'll just do that as part of the. So we'll go to build main. We're going to keep the. Well, we can create a source file, but if we commit this to Go and there's nothing inside of the source folder, it's just gonna not even make it. So we'll create the source as part of our create project. So I'm just going to cut that whole function out. Go to editor, project, I call this create, and we'll just paste it up here. And then we will grab also this last error here and make that as the end of. So I'm going to say if error is equal to file system error is not equal to nil, return error. And then we're going to say return, and then the project template folder is going to be the path folder. Okay, so now that will fix that problem. So let's just run our project template generate so it deletes that source folder inside the project template. And then I'm going to delete this test and we're going to run again. And now we should have a test folder here. There's a source folder, source, and it doesn't have that warning at the top, but everything else does. Ooh, multiple times. Because it's being copied multiple times. Good catch, but annoying. So our copy is saying that's a Go source file, and then it's copying that first part again. I don't know if Go probably doesn't like. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's twice, really. We'll come back, and that's like cleanup stuff. We don't care about that. It's not going to prevent this from working. So the last thing to do here is we're going to probably set up a. I mean, we can technically copy this launch JSON file, but the problem is it has an editor flag for build tags, which we don't really want. So this one's kind of long. I'm going to create a new test for that because there's a few things we need to do. We need to create the VS Code launch to make it easier to run the VS Code against our test project. And we also want to create a build script for being able to build our project into an executable on the target platform. So those are two separate things we can do as a separate task, but this is just kind of the project setup. Okay, so if I wanted to, I can take this VS Code folder. I'm going to copy that into test, paste it into test, and then I'm going to open up this as a new VS Code window. Okay, and I was just thinking, there is also a couple other things we need to do. We need a go mod as well, go mod init, and I'm actually going to call this Kaiju because the thing that is, oh, I'm supposed to be inside of this folder, source test. Okay, when I had that test folder existing when I was creating the other one, so that's not to worry about. So I'm just going to create this, delete that test. So I'm actually going to call it Kaiju because when I copy the source over, it's all going to be referencing Kaiju, like Kaiju Matrix here. And this Kaiju has got to be replaced with your project name. So to keep things simple for this test run, I'm going to do go mod init Kaiju, and that's going to give us that. And I just copied this over for now just to test it. So here I should be able to run uh, Kaiju editor project is not an STD. So I need to change this to runtime because editor doesn't exist. Obviously, that wasn't a folder that was copied in. So this one seems to be going. And now we've created our window. And it says starting runtime. Cool. So our project setup is complete. We just need to create a new issue for dealing with the build script, the VS Code, and also doing this renaming, some of this cleanup stuff. But as for everything else, it seems to be working fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this test folder. We don't need it anymore. Um, cool. I want to test deleting project template. I think I checked for that. So let's build run project template, and it should create it. So we don't actually have to commit project template as part of the Git repository or anything like that. Cool. That's it for this one.